Hi, everyone. We'll be starting the webinar shortly. We'll give everyone a few more minutes to hop into the room, and then we'll begin. So thanks for your patience. So we're about 3 minutes in. I think this is a great time for us to begin. Thank you all for joining. I know all of you have a very busy day probably ahead of you, so appreciate your time. Essentially, we wanted to discuss the broad solution suite that we have here at Similarweb. We'll be covering a live demonstration of how to best use our different products to really find the ultimate solution for your PE or VC firm. So, happy to already see some familiar faces here in the attendees list. This is specifically focused on working with our existing customers and really understanding, what other products could potentially help best serve your firms. So with that said, I'll go ahead and we can get started. So Similarweb solutions for private equity and venture capital firms is what we'll be covering today. And for those of you that don't know me, my name is Fabiana. I am a senior client success analyst here at Similarweb. I am just a few weeks shy of my 4-year anniversary at the company. And I work with all of our customers in the PE and VC space. I've spent, like I said, the past 4 years at Similarweb actually working with our corporate customers as well, and transitioned over to focusing on private investors a few years ago. And essentially I work in tandem with your assigned account managers to help provide value, and what you can really think of me as our products expert and use case and platform expert. And a little bit of an agenda of what you can expect to be covered on today's webinar. We'll highlight the primary investor use cases for the private investors side of things. We'll go into an overview of the different Similarweb solutions and our product suite. And essentially, we will actually do a live demonstration of these solutions in action. And just before we dive in, where this idea for this webinar really came about is I had a conversation with our Chief Product Officer, Benjamin Saror, in December about essentially our broad offerings. And internally at Similarweb, we call our products solutions. But at the end of the day, really, especially when it relates to the different private equity and venture capital firms we're working with, a lot of times to create the ultimate actual solution for your business needs is through combining multiple Similarweb products. So with that said, we want to dive in. What I find really unique and what I love about working with the PE and VC space here at Similarweb is it's probably our customer segment that we can sell the most products to. And that's just because there are 1,000,001 use cases. And when we really think about our core investor use cases for the private side of things, which we'll go into momentarily, you'll see that the different products combined can really create that ultimate solution to fit your business needs. So here we have listed some of our different solutions. Digital research and digital marketing intelligence are likely what you're all familiar with. This is what we call Similarweb Pro, really our core solution and platform that you are likely all on. And so essentially digital research, how I view it, it allows us to dive into a company's performance, allows you to understand more macro trends as well as what's happening in a given space or industry, and allow you to do the competitive benchmarking that you're very familiar with. Digital marketing intelligence is more focused on acquisition strategy and tactics. And so when we think about the private investor side of things, when you are trying to grow your portfolio companies, this will be a huge tool in terms of finding white space opportunities to grow your different digital marketing channels. Sales intelligence, this is what you might have heard as our sourcing tool. So because Similarweb covers over 100 million websites globally, we're actually able to use that huge database of websites and allow you to find companies that could be of interest for you to invest in. So really helpful from the ideation perspective, and also allowing you to really enrich your sourcing process. Shopper intelligence is one of our newer solutions that we launched about a year ago. This is one that we are incredibly bullish on, and it's a really unique product that allows you to monitor shopper behavior and consumer demand essentially in marketplaces. So it covers marketplaces like Amazon, Walmart, Target, Best Buy, Chewy, and we'll be diving into that product so you can understand how to use that product for whether it's sourcing new brands on Amazon, so you can think of almost like an Amazon aggregators type of use case, or if you're looking to really grow your portcos and their Amazon presence or their other marketplaces presence, this is a fantastic tool to do so. And then lastly, we'll be mentioning our new partnership with Data AI, formerly App Annie. So we do have app data available in the Pro today, but we've just expanded this partnership in the recent months. And we now are leveraging Data AI's data set in terms of the app coverage. And we cover now over 8 million apps globally to allow you to really understand app performance and monitor that landscape. I mentioned how we see our core use cases for the private investor community, and really how I like to think of it is sourcing, due diligence, and portfolio management. And essentially, you can see how our product suite fits into these different use cases, whether it's more of that ideation perspective from sourcing, allowing you to also qualify and enrich company data, and then perform due diligence to understand how a given company or brand is performing, benchmark that against industry or category level, dive in to be able to better understand how consumers are navigating the web at scale and better understand demographics, browsing behavior, and then on the marketing efficiency side, learning the acquisition strategy and tactics of the companies you're interested in, how that differs from potential competitors or the market that you're playing in. And then so you see the overlap between due diligence and portfolio management. A lot of the use cases you'll see in due diligence are just as relevant in portfolio management. So I think it's something very unique to Similarweb to be able to really go from ideation to execution and promote company growth with our different solutions across websites, marketplaces, and mobile apps. So I mentioned our Data AI, formerly App Annie, partnership that we've recently launched. This is also something we're super excited about and already hearing great feedback from our customers in your space. So if this is something that you've been potentially shopping around, looking to pull in more granular app data, we will be lightly talking about this today, but always, whatever you see here today, if anything is of interest, please do not hesitate to reach out to myself. Do not hesitate to reach out to your assigned account manager so we can help you explore some of those options as well. And what we'll be really covering today, we're going to look at this from more of a brand strategy perspective. So while I would assume everyone on this call is familiar with how you're using Similarweb today for the different companies that you currently invest in. We know across our customer base in the private investors space, we're seeing our customers invest in absolutely every industry, whether it's consumer, whether it's B2B, whether it's B2C, and everything else in between. But we wanted to really hone in on today's webinar into brand strategy across different channels. So Similarweb's able to cover, if you look at multi-channel or omni-channel strategies for a brand, we're able to cover website performance, mobile app performance, and that marketplace performance. So really anything that's happening digitally, Similarweb will allow you to gain insight across those different mediums. And that is what we'll be diving into today. So didn't want to spend too much time in deck. We want to show you our data and the solutions in conjunction live in action. So we will be covering for today's webinar a company called Supergoop. They are a player in the sunscreen space. They have really accelerated over the years. And as a consumer myself of beauty, they're a very, very hot name and have some fantastic products. I'm definitely familiar with our customers and their portcos, and we've seen a lot of our customers have made investments in players in this, luxury skincare and luxury sunscreen space. We thought it could be super relevant and quite seasonal. Summer months are just about to kick off. I think the solstice was just yesterday, so I thought it would be a very relevant topic to cover for the webinar. So we're going to first dive into our sales intelligence platform, and really what you can think of this is our sourcing tool. So there's 4 great ways to actually find new leads, and leads you can think of as potential investments. Really what the crux of this is our lead generator tool, allowing you to input the criteria that you're looking for, whether it's company information, whether it's looking for particular companies in a given industry of a given size, whether it's particular visits of unique visitors, engagement metrics, marketing channel acquisition, Ppc spend, you name it. We're able to essentially use this large database, inform the wizard here of the criteria we're looking for, and be able to output essentially that sweet spot of companies that you might be interested in, and then allowing you to move further, diligence those companies, and then if they are to become a portco, then be able to really grow those companies. We're not going to be covering the sourcing tool too much today, because one way we're going to find new leads is actually by topic. So what I've done here is use our sourcing tool, and one of those ways is to source by topic, where you can input a given keyword. So in this instance, I've used the term sunscreen, and we're able to see in the US specifically, who are some of the top websites that capture traffic for the term sunscreen. So we actually already see Supergoop amongst this list. One of the things I love to do here is even filter by different website types. So if you are looking, let's say, for a company that does have a transactional component, essentially that they can sell D2C, we can even filter to that and omit, let's say, content publishing websites in the beauty space like Allure or Cosmopolitan or Birdie. So we're left here, we see some of the key players in this space today. Supergoop is one of them. We see some acceleration, and this would lead me to perhaps want to perform some due diligence on this given company. So with that, and I forgot to mention, please feel free to use the chat or the Q&A to ask any questions. I will do my absolute best to be checking those and answer them as we go along. But now we're moving into the core pro platform that you likely are all familiar with. And one of the things when I'm looking at a company or a brand, one of the things I like to look at is being able to understand, number one, is there interest in this company? And one way we can do that is by looking at the search data for the given company. So right now we've entered the keyword, which is their branded term, Supergoop, to better understand, what that search interest and demand looks like. And then importantly also, who are the players that capture traffic for this given keyword? And I'm manning the chat. So we have a question of, can you separate brands from retailers in the Supergoop screen? So yes, we can. That's actually one of the things I love here, and one of the things I was going to mention, that we're able to see who's capturing traffic for Supergoop. And once again, we can omit other websites and filter, just as we did in that last view, to just content publishing or transactional websites. So we can understand traffic to Supergroup's D2C site, which we see here, that captures majority share. But we can also see, what other marketplaces capture traffic or other retail partners of theirs capture traffic as well. So I always find this is a key part in my initial analysis of understanding who are some of those players, because sometimes it's challenging to find what are the different channels and mediums that a given brand might be selling on. So this is a really important step in that process to answer that business question. And one of the things that I really like to mention here is the difference between search volume and search visits. I've gotten this question, even more so recently in the past month. And search volume you can think of as queries. So think of going into google.com, typing in Supergoop, and that is what you would consider a search query. You've searched for that term. That attributes to the volume here. And when we're looking at search volume, this is the average monthly volume, given looking at the past yearly average. So actually each of these bars here denotes the past 12 months. So you can see how that volume changes. Supergoop definitely seems to be quite seasonal. Makes sense because it's a sunscreen brand. But how volume differs from visits is visits are actually clicking into a result. So I can always go on Google, search for Supergoop, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I click into a result. And search visits show that consumers have clicked into a given result. And in this case, if you look at the ratio between volume and visits, we can see that the visits are higher, which signals to me that there are some consumers that are clicking into multiple results when searching for this brand. And this is pretty important to note because that will not always be the case, but it shows us a lot about consumer behavior of that. It's likely that these consumers that are searching for this particular brand are cross-shopping. They're looking at different retailers potentially. So they might open a result, let's say for the Supergoop result and .com, and then they might be opening a Sephora paid search result as well. And perhaps they're using this to inform where they actually want to convert. Is there preferred pricing on one retailer versus another? So we're also really key in your analysis when you're initially looking at a brand and their options of where they do sell and where consumers have the ability to convert on. So we see a nice uptick in traffic as we're nearing the summer months. We see that spike here in May, and understanding who's capturing the share. We do see most recently Supergoop is able to capture majority share. So this is also a great way to monitor brand protection. So let's say this company is already your portco. I would be looking at this on a monthly basis to see if some of your competitors are capturing traffic for your branded term. And so essentially this allows you to monitor brand protection when other competitors might be trying to conquest on your term. So essentially paying to bid on the keyword Supergoop so they can steal that traffic away from Supergoop and essentially lead those consumers to their websites. So this is the initial analysis. We can scroll down and see way outside of just the top 10, but this is where you might also want to filter for those website types. We can look at transactional websites specifically and understand where a given consumer can potentially convert to purchase Supergoop. So we're left with quite a nice list here. And with that, I'm diving into website analysis next and heading to one of my favorite areas in the pro called audience interests. And so I think a lot of times you can go in having a general understanding of who are the players in this space, who are the competitors, but really what this allows you to do is see who are the competitors in the eyes of the consumer. So this shows cross visitation between Supergoop and any other website across the web that they're visiting. So essentially, there's a handful of use cases I like to point out for PEs and VCs, this competitive view. So for example, if I want to understand what other players in the beauty and cosmetic space that Supergoop audience also visits in a 24-hour period, I will go here to see what that cross visitation looks like. And we can see it's a mix of some of those retailers that they might sell on, like Derm Store. You can always filter this to even cross visitation to see the highest cross shopping and overlap. But we can also see from a brand perspective, competitors like Elta MD, very big player in the space, as well as La Roche-Posay. So this is a great stop to understand who are the competitors in the eyes of the consumer. But some other ways that we're seeing, and I've definitely seen from the corporate side and working with all of our CPG and retail e-commerce customers at Similarweb over my tenure, is this is also amazing from a portco management side of, if you know where your audience is, it's easy to target them. So I've seen some brands use this and find incredible ROI by building display and programmatic campaigns based off of this data, or even engage in particular partnerships. So for example, I've seen customers see that their audience has very high visitation with Pandora. So they might do Pandora radio or podcast ads if they see that high overlap. Or for example, I mentioned some of our customers in the past seeing really great returns on using this to inform their programmatic campaigns. So if you're familiar with what's retargeting, or really there's another side of, if you look at programmatic, there's a few ways to essentially try to acquire customers. Retargeting, which you might be familiar with, you look at a product, 2 seconds later you see an ad for it, that's called retargeting. The other side of that is called lookalike or prospecting, which essentially, if I'm setting up a programmatic campaign and I am competitor to Supergoop like Elta MD or Sunbum, I would go in here and understand where essentially this audience that I would like to acquire is visiting across the web. I would call them, the audience that I'm trying to go after, I'm trying to target, and use the domains here to essentially execute on my programmatic campaigns. So this is a really, really great tool to target customers. And if you use this in comparison mode, you will see the relevant overlap and cross-visitation behavior as well. So super helpful tool. And in terms of a question that we just received of how are cross-visitation and period over period change calculated, fantastic questions. Cross-visitation is what percentage of the audience is visiting Supergoop and then also visiting a given domain in a 24-hour time period. And then in terms of period over period change, essentially we're looking at the past 18 months. So this would be comparing the past 18 months versus the previous. You have different ways of analyzing this. And we do, although the cross-visitation is within a 24-hour period, it is aggregated into a last month view, last 3 months, last 6 months, so on and so forth, as you see in the presets here. So with that said, I really like to use this to inform who are the competitors I want to dive into in my analysis to benchmark Supergoop's performance. And next, we'll go into traffic and engagement, which is probably the most used module in the platform. And this allows us really to stack up performance of given websites. So if you haven't switched over or migrated to the new facelift to Similarweb or our kind of Similarweb 2.0 Pro view, when you do head into competitive research now, you'll find website analysis sits there. You can query Supergoop and then build out the competitive set here, in which I've added Sunbum and Elta MD. You'll see here I've added a subdomain as well, and I'll talk about that momentarily and why this can be super helpful. But as I mentioned, this allows us really to size up the competition, understanding how much traffic goes to the Supergoop domain versus competitor domains like Sunbum and Elta MD. We can get a better understanding of traffic and engagement metrics and essentially who wins in these particular metrics in this time frame. So you'll see that a trophy next to that particular metric and player denotes that they have the strongest performance in these respective traffic and engagement metrics. I find this helpful. I think of it as an award show, but if we scroll down, we can actually see those metrics trended over time. So now we're looking at monthly visits. We're looking at Supergoop, especially that dark navy blue line, and we're seeing that month over month increase, and their competitors follow suit. it's clear that they're essentially the leader in this space from a traffic perspective, but always important to even look at things like bounce rate, essentially the percentage of visits that are staying on page. And also one of my favorite things to do in this analysis that I think I hear really great feedback from our customers in your space is being able to essentially understand traffic growth over time. So we can always look at different timeframes, whether it's looking at a trailing 3 months versus the previous period, which I hear is particularly helpful for some of you, or if you want to do something like a year-on-year analysis, and if I want to look at calendar year 2021 compared to calendar year 2020, I can select that given time frame, compare period over period or year on year, and it'll actually quantify growth for me and even create an average growth benchmark basically based off of this comp set. So we see for this comp set, there's about 102%, 103% growth. And we can see that Supergroup, although performing very strongly, they are a slightly bit under that average. So with about 87% year-on-year growth from 2020 to 2021. Alta's leading the pack here at about close to 110% growth rate in terms of traffic. And then the last thing I mentioned that I added the subdomain here. And I want to show you why subdomains are incredibly valuable. And when I'm talking to our customers, regardless of space, I always say it's super important to look at the subdomains of a given site. And if you scroll down and look under website structure, you can always see the subdomains of any site that you choose to query. And subdomains can be helpful for a variety of things. They can be indicative of if a website structures their website by different product lines. Essentially, you can isolate traffic to those given subdomains, allowing you to see how those different product lines are performing. It can also be really helpful for whether it's different revenue streams, whether it's login pages, whether it's sign-up pages, so different customer funnels or consumer journeys. And in this case, if you were to head to Supergroup's website, we always highlight that it's really important to also go through a website pretending like you're a consumer. So here I am on supergroup.com. I've added something to my cart. And if I go to checkout, you'll see the URL structure changes from supergroup.com to checkout.supergroup.com. And what this signals to me is this is a great place for us to better get basically back into a conversion rate. So if I head back, like I said, I've already queried checkout.supergroup.com. And if I go back to that monthly visits view, I can just isolate Supergroup and the checkout page. And if you hover over a data point, this can leave you essentially with some sort of conversion rate. And even here, what to more accurately do as well is we can always click these 3 dots and turn off subdomains as well. So supergroup.com will not include those subdomains. So really we're left with traffic going to supergroup.com strictly, and then the level of those actually making it to the checkout page. So you can divide the checkout page by the total, you can divide the checkout page traffic by the total page traffic to back into a conversion rate. So I hope you find that helpful if that's something that you were unaware of. And with that, we'll dive into a little bit more granular and dive into a particular marketing channel. And we've honed in on paid search. So if you were to scroll down in website analysis in the left-hand nav, you'll see this overview page. And this has probably been the hottest topic of 2022 because us at Similarweb realized that we could back into an estimate for the customer acquisition cost. And essentially how we do that is Similarweb is able to estimate Ppc spend since we're able to capture the traffic driven by a particular keyword, and we're able to pull in with our partnership from Google the cost per click for every keyword. We're able to back into this overall Ppc estimate, and we're looking at this competitively of Supergroup compared to some competitors. So that's kind of step number 1, calculating the Ppc spend, and it's nice and readily available for you here. And you can see it trended over time, even see it in different currencies. And so we see that Supergroup actually spends significantly more money in paid search and driving paid acquisition. And this is on desktop only. But we can calculate that CAC, or customer acquisition cost. Really, how we think of it is like cost per engaged customer coming in from paid search. So because we're able to see the paid search traffic and also what you call the bounce rate, which we define as the percentage of visits bouncing after visiting solely one page of a website. So essentially customers that are coming in and leaving, they're not staying engaged on the website. If you do the calculation of 1 minus the bounce rate, it will leave you with what you would call the unbounced rate. So the percentage of visits that do continue on the site. If you multiply that number by the paid search traffic, you will be left with the engaged paid search traffic. And then you can divide that figure, essentially have it as your denominator, and put the PPC spend, so what the company spent in that given time period, divided by that engaged paid search traffic to get the customer acquisition cost. So basically, how much did it cost that company to acquire an engaged consumer coming in from paid search? This has been incredibly helpful, whether it's the diligence process, whether it's portfolio management, advisement. You can look at this from different time periods. You can look at it competitively. So there is a lot you can do with this data, and I hope you find it helpful. Once again, reach out to your account manager if you want to set up a call so we can walk you through this. We'd be happy to. And a question we had is, what do we mean by engaged in this context? Engaged is essentially a consumer that is navigating more than one page on a website. So they're not just, let's say, clicking into a Supergroup paid search ad on Google and then bouncing, so clicking out of the page, or clicking back and going back to Google. They are essentially moving through and navigating throughout the Supergroup site. So they've clicked into another page on the Supergroup site, whether it was the add to checkout page or looking at another product. And now we'll go into keywords. And I think we've seen a very big shift in the past 2 years, especially, and even more so in the past year, of our customers in private space, both P and VC, wanting to focus more on portfolio management, advisement, and growth. So really working with their portcos and using Similarweb data to advise them on what they should be doing in their digital marketing channels to acquire more traffic. And since search is so huge in digital marketing, I thought it would be remiss if I didn't lightly cover at least one of my favorite tips and tricks in terms of where you can find low-hanging fruit to advise your portcos. One of the things I love is we have all of these amazing filters to find that low-hanging fruit within a few clicks of a button. And one of my favorite things is to do is go into competitive traffic. And if you click into keyword opportunities, it will essentially show you where Supergroup captures 0 to 1% of the search traffic share for given keywords, and their competitors that we're analyzing are capturing more. So I'm going to apply this filter, and we'll be able to understand where they might have some opportunities. Let me click that again. Against their competitors. And this is really helpful, whether it is paid search, whether it's more on the SEO and content side. So I recommend even sending this type of report to your given portcos once a month. You can always even add it to a dashboard using this plus button, kind of set it and forget it. The data will automatically populate every month, and you can turn it easily into a nice PDF and share it with your portcos. But now we're left here with a handful of, number one, how many search visits that Supergroup is that's potentially missing out on. And this is just from the desktop perspective. And we see that we've removed non-branded keywords. There are some misspellings here, and we could always omit some of that noise, like removing bum or someone writing Ella, misspelling Elta MD. And I can exclude those keywords, and we can be left with a more refined list of where some opportunities might lie. So for example, a keyword, and really a question rather, of consumers asking, can you tan with sunscreen? It drove 1,000 visits, and all of those visits went to Ulta MD. All of those visits were organic traffic, so they've really optimized from an SEO perspective. To me, this signals a great opportunity for Supergoop's SEO and content team, especially if they have a blog, to create some sort of content, if they don't have so already, on answering this consumer question. That way they can get awarded by Google and essentially rank higher in the search engine results page, the SERP, and capture some of that traffic, driving consumers to their site and hopefully getting them more familiar with the Supergoop brand, and then ultimately even allowing them a possibility to convert. So these are some of the ways that I'd recommend advising your portcos of how they can use Similarweb to grow their efforts. So with that, we're going to shift gears a little bit to my favorite part of the Similarweb Pro platform, which is website segment analysis. This is an area of the platform that is crazy powerful because it allows you to pinpoint traffic to a page or a group of pages within a website. So you can imagine the use cases are endless, but essentially when we're looking at a brand, and especially a brand that sells on different partner retailers, whether it's partner retailers like Sephora or Ulta, or it's even marketplaces like Amazon or Walmart, what you're able to do with segment analysis is define traffic to Supergoop pages on those given websites so you can understand traffic and engagement on those partner retailers. So this is very key for if you're performing diligence, or if you already invest in this company and they are one of your portcos, to consistently monitor, understand not just on their D2C site how they're performing, but how they're performing on their partner retailers and how they stack up on their partner retailers. And so here I've already created the segments for some of their key partners, and we're looking at traffic to Supergoop pages on their partners and even the supergoop.com site over time. This is the desktop only view, but for those of you that already have segment analysis today, I don't know if you're familiar, but we did just launch a beta view for mobile web traffic. So this is a huge release after having this module for 2 years with only desktop data. So play around with it and send us your feedback as well. But what we're looking at is, some insights here. We see that Supergoop actually surpassed Sephora, who captures the most traffic on desktop for Supergoop across the web, really. So it shows to me that they are, number one, their strongest retail partner, or at least in terms of receiving the most traffic for the brand. And they even beat out the D2C site from a desktop perspective. So it allows you to size up their business really across their different partners and see not just traffic metrics, also engagement metrics. And one of my favorite columns here is overlooked, and it's called segment share. And essentially what this means is, of the website that you've created the segment for, so let's say Sephora, number one here. Essentially the segment we've created, Supergoop traffic on Sephora, makes up 1.7% of Sephora's total desktop traffic. So it allows you to see how significant Supergoop's business is overall to Sephora.com. And you can create segments for Supergoop's competitors and essentially see how big Supergoop's business segment is to Sephora versus competitors and size up that way. So this is one way to use segments. I can list off for those of you that might not focus on investing in brands and consumer, whether it's tracking traffic to, let's say, a software company that has a requested demo page or a sign up page, whether it's looking at not just a brand, but a product or a product display page. There's so many use cases, as well as even backing into a conversion page as well with segment analysis. This is one of the tools I find that is very essential for PE and VC to really understand so many different views on performance, whether it's a consumer brand like Supergoop or really any type of company that you're performing due diligence on or is your portco. And we can take this one step deeper and even see the marketing channels. So essentially, how did consumers get to Supergoop pages on retail partners, even versus Supergoop in this page view? I like looking at this from a percentage perspective because we know that the traffic is different, but we want to see in which the way consumers get to these different retailers for Supergoop. Is it very similar? Is it starkly different? And one of the things you might want to look at is the paid channels like paid search and display. Which of your partners are spending their money or spending co-marketing dollars? So a lot of if you're working with or invested in brands, consumer brands, a lot of times they will allocate part of their marketing budget to give to their retail partners to acquire traffic. So if we look at paid search and display ads, those are paid acquisition tactics. So it's really important to also see who's driving paid traffic versus not. So you can monitor some of those retail partners and even use this in those meetings that your portco has with their retail partners saying, hey, we're seeing partner X is having a lot of success with driving paid acquisition traffic to their pages. Is there any way we can, strengthen our co-marketing efforts? Or let's say you're looking at Supergoop on Sephora versus Sunbum on Sephora or Ulta MD, some other brands. If you're seeing your other partners are investing more heavily in driving traffic to competitor brands, that is a great data point to bring to them in your meetings with them to say, hey, we deserve this level of treatment as well. What can we do to strengthen our partnership? And this is actually how I worked with all Fortune 500 CPG brands here at Similarweb, and also how you'll want to advise your brands as well. So with that, we are the last stop really in the Pro platform. So digital marketing intelligence and digital research intelligence is covering our new partnership with Data AI that is now launched in our platform. You'll still have access today to our digital research intelligence and our app analysis through Similarweb. But if you do decide that you want to explore adding on the Data AI, formerly App Annie add-on, it's wonderful that we've created this partnership to pull in their app data that has fantastic coverage. And so I really took this from the perspective of looking at some of those partner retailers like Sephora, Ulta, and Nordstrom, and we're able to see metrics like monthly active users, sessions, time spent on app, and even some of those averages. So you can not just stack up, let's say, companies of interest. So if I was doing due diligence on any app, I would want to use the app analysis powered by Data AI here in Similarweb to better understand how a given app is performing. And then also, in this case, you can even see it from the perspective of what's the engagement on partner sites, even if your brands don't have their own D2C app. So wanted to highlight this just because it's something we're super excited about to enhance our coverage and engage in this really, really strategic partnership. So with that, I'm really excited to introduce many of you to our Shopper Intelligence platform. And Shopper Intelligence is going to look different than the Pro platform. It actually sits as a standalone platform. And this allows us to understand performance on marketplaces and consumer behavior and shopping behavior on marketplaces. Right now, we're looking at Amazon.com in the US. We do have Shopper Intelligence available today for 6 different markets of Amazon, as well as Walmart, Target, Best Buy, and Chewy in the US. And what this allows you to do is understand category performance and subcategory performance on a marketplace like Amazon, which we're doing here. We've honed into sunscreen and tanning products category, and you'll see the category trees match that of Amazon. And just to give a little plug to how the data is collected here, it's the same methodology that we have for our Pro platform. So being able to use our contributory network, being able to use direct measurement, being able to engage in data partnerships like credit card data, and also use public data sources like being able to scrape ratings and reviews. That is all essentially combined to what you're seeing here in the shopper intelligence platform. And what's really unique to this is we pull in revenue and sales performance data. So you haven't seen anything like this in the Pro platform before. So it really will enhance your sourcing, due diligence, and portfolio management processes for players in that play on marketplaces. So now we're seeing category level performance. We are seeing, the increase of units sold as we enter those warmer months where people are purchasing more sunscreen and tanning products. We can overlay this with metrics like revenue as well, and even look at period over period, or even year over year or month over month views as well. We can dive in and get a better understanding of the competitive landscape and who are the top players in this given space. So we see that in this case, Supergoop is not a top 10 player, but we do see some of their competitors like Sunbum and Ulta MD are actually stronger on Amazon in this category than Supergoop. You can always do an Excel download, slice and dice the data, but we see that Supergoop lands around number 14 in terms of top brands in the past 2 years in this given category. But they are growing like crazy, which is amazing, almost 300% increase in period over period change. And we can even see some of the performance by by subcategory. So in terms of sourcing, this is a great way to see which categories are accelerating and see what brands play in a given category if you want to invest in them. And we even go down to the product information. So we can see how a given product is performing, or even group products and see their performance over time. With that, we've created a view that's very similar to that audience interest that you saw in the Pro platform. But instead of looking at websites, here we're looking at brand performance and that brand cross-shopping on Amazon. So when consumers look at a Supergoop page, product page on Amazon, this allows us to see what other brands' product pages are they also viewing. So you would read this, viewers of Supergoop also have a 13% or 12% overlap with Ulta MD. Their most significant overlap is actually with La Roche-Posay. So you can consider this in the past year, Supergoop's biggest competitor in terms of overlap and cross-visitation. And then you could also see the inverse of, visitors, let's say to Ulta MD, actually have a lower cross-visitation of consumers looking at Ulta MD pages first and then looking at Supergoop pages. So really helpful to understand who are your competitors on Amazon. Also, you can change the timeframes to see how this is evolving over time. You will usually not see the same set if I change this from the last year view to the last 6 months view to the last month view. So it's very relevant data. And also it allows your portcos to understand where they might have some on platform advertising opportunities. Think of your own Amazon behavior. I know when I look at something, you see sponsored products when I'm looking at a given product page. This is a great place for your portcos to understand where overlap is and where to engage their sponsored product advertising dollars. So you can use this very executional. And aside from just the top few players, we can see that greater space. So we see other players like Pharmacy, Neutrogena, CeraVe, Kula are also brands that are relevant that this particular consumer set is also viewing when looking at Supergoop pages. Now, this will look a little bit more similar to the Pro platform. We're able to go into the benchmarking view and enter different brands, and we could even compare them in a specific subcategory or overarching category. So I've selected all mutual. We can actually deselect that, look at skincare specifically. And we're looking at Supergoop versus Ulta MD, Sunbum, Kula, and La Roche-Posay. And now we're able to overlay those units sold metrics. We see that Ulta MD leads the pack at 2 million units sold in since December 2020. But even though they have the highest amount of units sold and even actually the highest amount of revenue, as you can see here, players like Sunbum have higher conversion rate and actually just overtook the highest monthly units sold in the most recent month being May 2022. I think this view is incredibly helpful, so you can always keep your finger on the pulse of how your portcos are performing competitively, or it's also super helpful, obviously, in the diligence process. And we can even look at consumer behavior. And so I'm diving into loyalty and retention. And I think this is so interesting to understand metrics like, and excuse me while the left-hand nav bar wants to stay on the page here. There we go. Metrics like purchase frequency. So we can understand what percentage of transactions, or really the unique customers rather, are fanatics, as Similarweb defines as 5+ transactions, loyalist 2 to 4 transactions, or one-timers, and compare that competitively across the board. So for example here, we see Ulta MD with the lowest amount of one-timers and highest amount of loyalists here, as well as fanatics. This would cause me to wonder, okay, what is causing this repeat purchase behavior? And I would look into maybe some of the top products, even go into Amazon and some of the product pages themselves. Is it something to do with, do they offer a great subscribe and save program? Do they have competitive pricing? Those are some of the business questions I would ask, and then be able to answer even some of those in terms of, let's say, does pricing affect, let's say, this purchase behavior? So we do have pricing data in the platform in Shopper Intelligence, and we can see that split for Supergroup and how it compares. I love this view of new versus returning users that you can see. So we can, definitely see once again Ulta MD and even La Roche-Posay with a really strong amount of returning users. So it looks like they have really strong brand awareness and loyalty. That'll likely be a business question that you're looking to answer and can, that you're looking to answer and can do so with the help of Shopper Intelligence. We see for Supergroup, it's more of a 70-30 split. And even things like days since last purchase per returning customer. I think this is really, really interesting to be able to see the data sliced and diced and really spliced out like this, allowing you to understand, when do we retarget customers? When are they really most likely to purchase something else? So really helpful, also data that's very actionable for your portcos and their marketing strategies. And then lastly, subscribe and save data, which is also, I think, quite stellar in this platform. So we see companies like Ulta MD and Sunbum do really well in the subscribe and save space compared to the others in the competitive set. This would signal to me, what can we do to get Supergroup up to that level, essentially? So, and why today is the subscribe and save data, or subscribe and save customer base so much larger for Ulta MD and Sunbum? Once again, how I answer some of those business questions is I like to go in, look at some of their top products, which you can always find in Shopper Intelligence, and essentially see, when I click into a product page on Amazon, which you can also do so through Shopper Intelligence, do they have promotions? Is it 20% off your first subscribe and save purchase? Because those types of promotions really make a key impact on subscribe and save data, and could create really strong repeat purchases for your portco. The very last thing we're going to be covering in today's presentation, so thank you all for being such a great audience and bearing with me through the plethora of information I've been throwing at you, is on-site search. So right now we're looking at Supergroup and what their on-site search behavior is. So we can see, number one, the product clicks over time, segmented by organic and paid clicks. So we do see clicks overall are, at an all-time high in the past essentially 2 years. And we're seeing that uptick in the most recent months, but also we're seeing spending. So those paid clicks also increase. Out of the search data here, driving traffic to Supergoop pages, what percentage are branded going to the selected brand? So branded going to Supergoop. So consumers looking for search terms with Supergoop in them and actually clicking into a Supergoop result. How much are branded and actually for other brands? And then what percentage are non-branded? So this is your white space opportunity, that non-branded section. And how I would go about making this data as actionable as possible to advise your portfolio companies is looking at this keyword data. So number one, we can see what are the keywords, how many clicks they receive, what percentage is organic versus paid. So for example, what products, even like unseen sunscreen, SPF 40, very heavily paid keyword. And then being able to, this is my favorite metric, understand what the brand share is. So for that given keyword, what percentage of those clicks go to Supergoop versus go to other brands. And one of my favorite things to do here is remove branded keywords. So if I type in Supergoop, exclude those keywords, I'm now left with more unbranded keywords for the most part. So let's take the number one unbranded keyword, sunscreen, very basic, very generic. We see that Supergoop in the past 2 years has gotten about over 86,000 clicks for the keyword. Of that percentage, 78% are organic, 22% are paid. So it is still a very heavily paid keyword. How many total clicks happen for this keyword? So think about that as almost the search keyword TAM. What's kind of the total potential clicks, and then that leaves you with the brand share. So Supergoop doesn't even get 2% of that total possible clicks, really showing you that there is a lot of white space opportunity here. And you can see even what the brand's average unit price is versus competitors. So is pricing a factor in maybe why other competitors are able to capture share? We can click into that keyword, understand who are the brands that do capture the most traffic for that keyword. So once again, who is your competition? And is this a viable keyword to go after? So Neutrogena is number one, but we see competitors Sunbum and Elta high up on that list as well. So what can the portcos do? Can they invest and put more money into on-platform advertising in search on Amazon to try to steal some of this traffic away from competitors and essentially acquire new customers? So with that essentially takes us through all of the material I wanted to cover today. Once again, I know I threw a lot at you, so thank you all for sticking around, and just wanted to open it up to see if there's any remaining questions before we hop off on today's webinar. Giving it about like 20 more seconds just to see if anything comes through, and I can also selfishly take a water break. All right, well, that looks like there are no remaining questions. Once again, we really appreciate you joining us today. We will be sending follow-up emails with the webinar recording. And like I mentioned, please don't hesitate to reach out to your account manager if there's anything you saw that was of interest today. We're happy to walk you through and even participate in particular trials if there's something that you're interested in exploring out of our product suite. But thanks again and have a lovely rest of your day. Take care and be well.